to me, but can't stop the bum rush.
What I think happened when the Eclipse, faded away and the Edge came in, it was clear that the Edge was going to be a venue.
The Eclipse got shut down for like a while.
The management had changed a little bit. Probably a better person than the rest that had already left. I knew this person on quite a good terms, friendly terms. He asked me to invest in it.
So they'd spent money on the Edge. They'd definitely spent money on it. Before, it looked like they'd actually, in the Eclipse, gone in and taken over the bingo wall and just stuck lights up here and there in the sound system. The Edge, they've spent money on.
To make the box attractive again is the answer.
Wasn't no sort of partnership or anything like that in it. It was just a friend that wanted to borrow some money. I lent him quite a substantial amount of money. The venue sort of got an overhaul.
New improved sound system.
The sound system was suspended from the ceiling as well, kind of arching out. And there's a much better sound system than the Eclipse. It was just amazing. It's so crisp.
New improved lighting system.
Laser Magic had gone. Unfortunately, that was one of the things I did miss from there. They still had the lights in there, but it wasn't Laser Magic when they were done it.
Which is the be-all and end-all for your punters.
Where they had temporary dance risers, now they've built permanent ones at either side, so each side was a big concrete with a fence on it as well, so you didn't fall off and drop your noodles.
Upgraded to what it was. It was a shithole when it was being shut down.
The Eclipse to the Edge was like chalk and cheese.
Financially, the club was still in a bad sort of place.
But the whole place felt like a proper venue.
Yeah, obviously your DJs, but your sound and lighting, sound over lighting for me, is great attraction.
A load of us went down for the first night, and that was the first impression of how all that sort of thing was. A room full of people, smoke, lasers, and everything, and it was amazing. I just fell in love with it straight away, and just had to go every week.
This lad did invested a lot of money in it and reopened it as the Edge.
And I don't know if a name changes that ain't the answer for me.
I remember when they changed it to the Edge. I don't know why or whatever, I can't remember. All I know we was getting booked for it.
This is the whole part where we do what we do, because if you want the music to progress, it can never be the same.
I didn't notice the difference. All I knew is that they changed the name. I didn't know why.
I can't remember any difference in the sound systems. I thought they was all thumping.
We were laying the foundations of that back then. Music moves fast back then.
I didn't notice the difference at all, because most of the time when I turned up there, it was like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning.
I just knew it as the same people that was running it. I'm sure it was the same people, and that's it.
I didn't notice any difference.
So, yeah, it wasn't a surprise to us, like, the Eclipse had changed into something else, the Eclipse had changed into something else when it became the Edge. That was no surprise to me, because the music had changed as well. Most
of the time, when I turned up there, it was like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. I'd just like drive in after everything, because, I never started off at the Edge. I always finished off there. I always played late sets. Do you know what I mean? Like, sometimes I'd be there and I'd see Doc Scott, Doc Scott was so young then.
It looked professional, it was done up nice, relatively nice if you like grey.
I never noticed a difference. It was just the Eclipse, the Edge, same thing to me. We just go there, bang it out. Do you know what I mean? People were having it large, you know what I mean? And there's a lot of love in there, a lot of love in there, man. So there was a lot of activity coming out of the Midlands then, do you know what I mean? A lot of activity coming out of the Midlands.
It wasn't so much called darkcore, we used to call it jungle techno, because it had that fall to the floor and the break beat mixed into one.
Ratty, every party I played at one point, I was on either after him or before him.
To Neil Tricks and stuff like that, and Fallout and that, like, I thought they had their own sound.
Tango, Ratty and Fallout, they were more upbeat, more up-tempo. That's the sound that was coming out, like, of Leamington sound, that Kenilworth area at the time.
Tango, rest in peace, my brother, was a bloody musical genius.
Jamie Tango come and stood next to me, and they were playing his track. And I was just sort of like looking at him and looking at the crowd and looking at him, and he's just soaking up.
He was such a humble guy, do you know what I mean? But he made some great tunes. I mean, DJ SS.
And Formation as well.
From Leicester, just like literally up the road, was formidable and prolific at that time. He probably put out about 20 records a month on his labels at that time. Do you know what I mean?
They introduced the darkness to it, the dark melodies to the beats.
Goldie speaks about it quite a lot, this kind of light going into dark sounds. And a lot of the guys that were from this area were pioneers in that sound, you know, you can't deny it.
By that time, me and Brian G had started our label, V, right, in 1992. So we started experimenting with some jungle kind of sounds in there, but very dark. That time it was the dark side.
Well, it would have been hardcore, innit? Early jungle. But they were one of the same thing. You know, it all mixed together, innit? It was all together.
We were looking at people like Doc Scott, Tango, Ratty, Essence of Aura. You know, those guys were kind of pioneering that sound.
Well, Scott and Keith Suckling were mostly two of my good friends up there in the early days. Simon Bassline Smith and Leroy, for me, who is DJ SS. Formation.
The music had completely changed. You were then really at the beginning of early signs of drum and bass and jungle. You know, it's very hard to define the term jungle.
But I don't think they get recognised enough in the overall scene. Not that they, you know, they were flying the flag for that end of the country.
Neil Tricks is from Cov, Scotty from Cov. You had Fabio and Groove at Rage, and we brought that kind of sound. There was a lot of dark side stuff.
What Reinforced Records were doing, so you're still talking about hardcore, but you're now, for me, seeing a good infusion of reggae samples, reggae bass lines.
With the hardcore, so it was all in bed together.
And I think that it got noticed how much people loved it, slowly but surely. This is just my opinion of a phased memory. The jungle scene was born.
And that is where the inception of jungle kind of came from, that era.
I think the difficulty that the Edge had is that music was changing so quickly, and it was very difficult for any club to put a stamp on what they were, their identity. You know, how did they market what they were?
What's my favourite night there? Wow.
You know, what's really important to identify is that the Edge was just a shell.
Banging tunes, Amnesia House, your Fibre Optic, Jungle Fever.
Yeah, that's really difficult.
And actually bringing in different promoters allowed you to market different kinds of music.
Banging tunes night, you'd have quality beats in there.
Fibre Optic could come in and do their jungle techno approach.
Dance Planet was the epiphany for me, really.
Just trying to think.
Showing a video of a train going backwards and forwards, and it runs into some bloke and obliterates him. And all the music was dark, and the imagery was dark.
Jungle Fever.
It'd be a London sound, and it would be more like your jungle. A lot of ragga in there as well, DJ Ron, etc.
I think, yeah, that Dreamscape one was really good. A lot of nights there was just the Edge, you know, lasers, smoke, and you know, floor bouncing.
We were sticking with our format, the Groove Riders, the Jumping Jack Frost, the Mickey Finns. We stuck with them all the way, you know, like, and we sort of went along with them, if you know what I mean.
The people who used to go to the Eclipse, they would never see the Edge as the Eclipse.
The crowds changed from different people again coming to our events.
The lots of Sasha and your Parks and Wilsons, they went another direction.
To different people not coming to our events. The drugs changed again into something that we didn't want.
So was there enough people to fill in the Edge when really it was still known as the Eclipse?
And Bam always did say, I must admit, you know, we should have went that way.
Fabio went to me one day when you could have kind of went down the road of Sasha and Cole Cox, but you didn't. You know, you come down the Jungle Road, which is, you know, a cool thing.
You could never remove that attachment to that club. So I suppose it was very difficult from the start.
In hindsight, when you look back now, maybe we should have.
But then the new people coming through, they'd heard all about the Eclipse and they didn't want to be that. They wanted to go to the Edge.
It weren't a decision. My art made it for me. I was into that music. It weren't about the pocket, it was about my art. That's the music that was gripping me at that time, you know?
Yeah, I mean, sound had progressed a lot. Breaks was controlling everything. You know what I mean? It was all breaks by then, the majority. You might get the odd 4/4 tune in there, but majority of breaks.
What Top Buzz were getting up to, that kind of living in darkness kind of period, which was hardcore for me, but with a naughty sub.
It was definitely music that was designed to get inside you and do something.
The hardcore is more the stab sounds, you know, the more, I don't know, drug-induced.
It was a different kind of energy. It was a kind of energy and it did play with your moods.
And if you're into your techno, it was a natural progression for the dark sounds because it was all about the bass, it was all about the noises.
It's very mood-swingy music. One minute you like I say, you're elevated, next minute you're screwing your face up, you know? It's
actually a direction, it actually took you somewhere.
Darkcore, yeah. I think it was it's just a very Midland sound.
There's people who I knew who had seen that outside of all of that, and then you go in and, you know, they're off their heads or something. It's like this is all new and weird, and, you know, but exciting at the same time.
People used to move to that, and you'd look at them and you'd think, well, what actually are you dancing to, mate? But they were bam, 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 all over the place, not actually hitting a beat at all, but it looked wicked.
The sounds that, if you're on drugs, will trigger your high. I assume.
And you've got to remember as a DJ, it's easy to play safe. The good thing about the Edge and the Eclipse was that people didn't have to play safe. They tried new music.
The evolution was the jungle sound was played in those hard, it was there, but it wasn't the only thing. And then over time, it span off into its own thing.
And I'm grateful to be part of this scene at that time, especially down at the Edge, where it was so family orientated.
I mean, even people like Goldie, you know, Goldie had made a track, he'd come down from London, you know, he'd given it to Groove Rider at the Edge, and Groove Rider played it.
And you heard tracks like Terminator, you know, Terminator being played at the Edge, and just watching the crowd, what do we do? You know, and they just got it. You know, there was some groundbreaking records.
It really, really was one of the forefronts for new music to be broken. And those guys really used to love coming up to our club and playing there.
I was there nearly every week. I was there nearly every weekend. Do you know what I'm saying? Not like a month didn't go by when I wasn't there. Do you know what I'm saying? At least once a month, sometimes every week I was there in that spot.
We were growing, and it was nice to see that people like Jungle Fever was coming out of London to the Midlands. They had more of it. They had a different crowd again to us.
The whole point of this was that it was going to be a flagship for Jungle.
I come from sound system culture, so that night, Jungle Fever was like a full-blown dancehall.
We were the most exciting parties. There was certainly an edge.
And that's when Fever, like, you know, we upped it.
I'd already been part of Jungle Fever in London.
A DJ would come, hour and a half before, maybe 2 hours before his set, have a rave, have a party.
I took us to Linford Film Studios.
He'd play, and then he'd still say...
This was the first time the venue came with their own security.
Them guys back in the day go, fuck it, I'm not going to other booking, I'm staying here, man.
They played it wrong to certain faces that we knew how to deal with.
It was called licking wood, innit? Everyone used to bang the walls and everything, and whatever they could bang, like when they wanted a rewind or the tune was good.
Certain faces went away, came back, fired a few shots off, and it was all a bit Wild West out there or whatever.
I was moulding it off of the sound system, the reggae sound system days, with lots of artists, lots of entertainment.
They're all going, oh, work, okay, well, that's that, you're fucked now, that's the end of that.
Visual, vocally, you know, talent.
No, we'd just go straight up to Coventry, to the Edge.
And that venue was perfect for it.
It was the first sort of full-on jungle event to be taken out of London.
Made them take all of their sound system out that they had in the Edge and put it in their second room. And we brought in our own CAV sound system for the main thing.
The sound system was popping.
We stripped a load of trees of all their branches.
Because you had the 2 balconies, yeah, you had the floor downstairs.
And then we turned the whole of the Edge into a jungle.
It was perfect.
Well, the DJ's the main attraction, obviously.
You had Ragga Twins, Navi, 5-0, fucking, it was a full-on jungle fest.
So what I try and do was not have too much of one thing, just bring the crowd up, like, you know, I might have Brocky playing sort of hardcore jungle.
I had stuff that was sitting on for a year. So for me, I was really looking forward to playing it at this event. And it was Brocky just phoned me up saying, like, Eastman said you're doing it.
Into the ragga sort of thing.
The parties went off.
You might get Ragga Twins coming in near the end. I used to try and overlap the MCs by about 15 minutes.
It was like chaos outside.
Because you had all the Manchester lot come up, you had the lot from Birmingham.
The vibes were on, like, it weren't like just stopping, completely different.
Then you'd have all of the London massive that came up on the coaches.
It would roll in. That's what I wanted to do.
All the local crews and everybody's in there and everybody knows they've got to behave in there.
I knew what was what with it in their armour, you know what I mean? What they was going to play, how they would play.
And even at that jungle time, it was still integrated.
It was like chaos outside, you know, it was rammed in there and still more people wanted to get in.
But I come from an era where it wasn't, so to be part of that natural progression and to have got to that point, when was it? End of 93 or 94, wasn't it?
Really good time for Coventry. You turn up, see just queues of people outside.
And some of the artists couldn't get in or something or other, so you know, at some point you went round the side to try and get them in, then you suddenly couldn't get in your own party. And it just worked. That kind of friction works. Whenever it just went off in there. They were superb parties.
Crazy times.
It was a groundbreaking night.
I left there quite, spiritually lifted and feeling that I'm part of that unification.
Was Coventry one of the birthplaces of jungle and drum and bass? I would 100% have to say yes.
Is it because it was in Coventry? It wouldn't have happened anywhere else, and it didn't. So yeah, it was a British, unique thing.
I obviously don't know the ins and outs of what went on in the background, but
the manager that owned the Edge, who I actually borrowed the money to, done something wrong and end up in prison.
Really moody, dark, dingy, freezing cold because they didn't pay the gas bill. So you'd have them turbo gas heaters in the corners just blowing the heat.
Your faction in your house went over there, your techno went over there, your breakbeat started to evolve into this drum and bass, this next level thing, sound clash kind of thing going on, and people just got lost. I got lost.
For me, what killed it was the music going dark.
We done a few events there, struggled to get my money back out of there. Then one day we done an event there, and I sort of basically had to steal my own money back, which I didn't really like doing.
Every other song was just a hover sample, and so it got a bit much for me.
I think if you keep a place fresh, it's got half a chance. When you keep doing the same thing in there, time and time again, I don't know how long something like that's going to last.
The atmosphere in there was different to the Eclipse as well. The Eclipse was more hedonistic.
But for me, crack ruined it. You know, a lot of people don't like to say it, but I'm going to say it. It's a taboo subject, but crack.
Cocaine, there's a lot of people smoking crack.
It did get quite moody in there. I did see some things I wished I hadn't.
Hands in the air changed to hands in pockets. Backs on walls and moody.
You could smell it in the air.
It was fucking fucked up. People like fucking wired in the parties. And it had a vibe. Do you know what I mean? It had a vibe until it went too far.
I mean, it weren't a nice feeling, really, to be amongst all that.
A lot of producers won't admit to you, but they started messing with that shit as well. And, you know, while they're messing with that shit, smoking that, and they're producing their tunes, it comes through. It comes through, it blatantly does, you know what I mean? You know, the producers in the early days, they'll tell you straight. They would have a little half a pill and getting a computer on, doing their thing, do you know what I mean? But then the darkness started to come in.
I found it attracted a moody crowd at one stage.
You had to get tickets from the record shop over the road, Moonshine. I had my ticket, and a guy from London tried to take my ticket off me.
You know, there were so many people like made their weekend money. Well, they made their week's money off going to a rave and robbing people.
And it was a shame to see that happen.
He's in our city, and he's trying to take my stuff. And I'm like, are you crazy?
Selling doffs, and I found that like COV people, we seem to like, we didn't just go to party, we went to profiteer.
Gangs in that corner, it was just totally different. That was the worst times.
When he got out of prison, he said to me, I do appreciate what you've done for me. I didn't like the way you done it, but I understand why you done it.
Where when we were doing our earlier events, the atmosphere, the music, it brought people together.
I used to love it in there, but I'm just trying to come up with maybe why people would get bored of a club.
And if that's going on, you ain't really want to be going out to them places. So everybody was trying to get something for nothing, every angle they could get, and it did kill the scene.
The club clearly wanted to keep what it originally set out to achieve, and that was a good place for people to go to all night. And you know, people don't go out to a club to expect there to be problems and to have a bad night. In fact, the whole idea of going to a club is to have a good night.
We used to turn up, there was no one there. Yeah, no queues outside. You know, we could see something happening here.
Unfortunately, a lot of the problems towards the end of the Eclipse and the Edge, as it began, was what went on outside the club.
It was sad because obviously there used to be crowds of people outside.
Attacked and people would be mugged.
No joke, me and Rob and Scott, we used to play to about 50 to 100 people. It was really, really sad to see the club really plummet. You know, where were all these people going? What happened?
Now, all these Midlands places, they had their own versions, didn't they? And this is still a small scene. However much you want, you know, if you go to a club and you see 1,000 people there, that's 1,000 people in one club, where there's still another 40 or 50 clubs within a 50-mile radius with a lot of people in there. So how do you keep those people coming back?
What got lost was people going out to have a good time. I think that's what got lost along the way somewhere. I don't know. Everybody had an agenda. You turn up and, you know, I'm there ready to bounce around, have a great time, and you see this little agenda going on, that little agenda, and someone's up to something over there, and it kind of lost its way a little bit, you know what I mean?
It attracted a sort of a moody element.
People fell out of love with a club because they've been there so many times.
We still talk about the jungle scene, and it's still stronger than ever. But some scenes have gone.
The spectacle's gonna kind of start wearing a bit thin.
And Coventry, I think, kind of didn't realise what it had and didn't use what it had to its own advantage.
Sadly, you could see it declining. Again, DJs not showing up, and there was a lot of covering with, the club closing early.
And then it was really emotional that it was all going to close.
It almost went back to what 86 was.
With a lot of, gangs turning up from other cities and stuff like that, and, they had rivalry from other cities.
We've gone through this summer of love, but now we're angry again. So we went back to that violence type of thing, and it introduced that back into it, because I think the violence came from greed. People saying, I deserve to have part of this, I deserve to get everything I can out of this. And that, unfortunately, to me, is one of the downfalls from Coventry.
Coventry is a big player in terms of music in general. You had ska, two-tone, all the type of stuff, the specials. And then obviously you've got the rave scene as well.
And Coventry should be very proud that it can stand there with its head held high and say, things happened just off that ring road that are worldwide, and people talk about them worldwide. And that can't be forgotten. That can't be taken away. It's there now. It's ingrained in history.